Hello, Mr. Alange.
Hey guys, Alan, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
How you feeling?
Beautiful. Wonderful. You're in
You
town
look
these
good.
days? You're in
You
town
look
these
good. You
days?
shaved. You look so
Yeah.
handsome.
Ah, the best. ready to go out in the town.
How's your heart?
Still there. Here, feeling it. Yeah, here.
Did they
Going
put
to-
in what they needed to? They got everything cleaned out?
They did an angiogram and they didn't find any blockage. All the doctors had a blockage. They found nothing. So they give me a good bill of health. Now I got a reprieve.
That's good.
Good.
Feel good. Yeah. Yeah. I went to this wedding last night, the Lisa Gorbachev, and it was a nice, beautiful wedding. It was at the Hilton, and I tell you, when I got an old Lexus, in a 2019 Lexus. So when I pulled up, they pulled my car up. I was embarrassed to get into because every other car, the Aston Martin, the Bentley, every car.
You're the smart one.
I said,
You're the
no.
smart one.
I said, no, this is not my car, you know. Had a couple Aston Martins. It was right there.
You
Like
should have said that I'm selling this car to Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
She's involved in politics, no?
What's that?
Isn't she involved in politics, Lisa Gorbachev?
Yeah, she's in politics, right?
Yeah.
Her father's is Len Fish. You know, he owns all the real estate downtown.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
So it's nice, yeah.
Okay, we're on Mem Gimel. We're actually on Mem Beis, Amud Beis, the last line. Ve'atem iatem kain. That means the coin says, you're not if you have Hashem fighting for you, the Aaron. Somebody needs to mute.
Oh, probably me. Sorry.
Okay, so v'chol kach lama b'nei Hashem v'kol kinuyav munachim bara. Hashem's name is in the Aron. V'cheinu omer vayishlach.
Sorry, where are we holding? Sorry.
Mem Gimel. Mem
Where?
Gimel. V'cheinu omer vayishlach osam Moshe elef lamatel atzava. Osam ve'ez Pinchas. Osam elu saned. Pinchas ze meshuach milchama. Uklei kodesh ze Aron v'lucha shebo. So these are the things that Moshe sent into battle against Midian. Tana. Lo lechinam halach Pinchas lemelchama. There was an ulterior reason that Pinchas wanted to fight the Midianim. El lipara din aviimo. He wanted to pay back the father of his mother, who was Yosef. Right? The Midianim are the ones who sold it. So when Pinchas went to do battle, he's taking revenge for Yosef. Is Pinchas descended from Yosef? Velazar ben Aaron lakachlo mibnos Putiel lo liisha. Elazar, who was Pinchas's father, took from the daughters of Putiel for a wife. Now, who is Putiel? My love does me Yisro. Shepite magolim over. He fatted calves to worship over the Zorah. So how can you tell me that Yosef's mother came from Yosef? He came from Yisro. Versus lo mi Yosef shepit peit be Yisro. Putiel is from Pitpeit. That means he conquered his Yetzer Hara. The Shvatim used to embarrass when he killed Zimri. Re'isem ben Puti ze ben shepitem avi mo galma v'razor yarog nosim Yisrael. So he was clearly referring to Yisro, not Yosef. Ella, I avur the imemi Yosef. So if his father's mother was descended, his mother's father was descended from Yosef. So ime the imemi Yisro, the maternal line came from Yisro. The ime the imemi Yosef. And if the mother of his mother came from Yosef, avur the imemi Yisro, the father of his mother came from Yisro. Dekanami dechsiv mibnos putiel. Means trei mashma. That means two forefathers were connected to the word putiel. One was Yisro, who was Pite Magol Avodah Zarah, and one was Yosef, who was Pit Peit Yisro. Mishnah. V'dibru ashotrim ela am leimor. Mi ha'isha asher bona bayis chadash v'lo chanacho yilech v'yishal lebin.
Ernie, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Just from this last Gemara, it would seem that there's a concept of revenge, intergenerational revenge. That Pinchas wanted to seek vengeance for his grandfather or his great-grandfather.
Go ahead.
Yet it doesn't seem in halacha, and it doesn't seem in the minhag and history of Klal Yisrael that there's such a concept. We don't have revenge on the Germans.
It says lo tikom v'lo titor. That's between you and a fellow Jew. The halacha.
So you want to say that there's an intergenerational, a Jew is allowed to take vengeance on a Polish or a German?
No, I just said lo tikom v'lo titor. That is a halacha ben adam l'chavero among Jews. But you're absolutely correct. We don't have a big tradition of nekama. It's kel nekamas Hashem. Hashem takes nekama, right? We in the Shir Shel Yom for Yom Revi is kel nekamos Hashem, and there are psukim which talk about Hashem revenging on behalf of Klal Yisrael. And it could be that here is a raya that you can have revenge against a nation that embittered you.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think you raise a good point.
I mean, if it would be the same people that sold Yosef, I hear, but if it's their children, their grandchildren, it's hard to hear. Anyway, don't want to interrupt too much, but that's
Right.
just my question, my thought.
The Poradin Avimo, he's paying back what was done to him in a Chanami. I don't see, hang on. So the Maral sort of takes Kenny's point. Sharei Mechiras Yosef Haisadoras Achadim Kodem Lekein. V'chol Anogim B'Davar Kvar Mesu. The Maral specifically brings up Kenny's point. The people who sold Yosef are long gone. Ela shakavanaita sheroy lepinchas sheyinkom nikmas Hashem b'midyonim shechtiu es Yisrael biznus. Remember, the Balak, Bilam advised them, and the Midyanim went out and seduced and caused Klal Yisrael to sin. And Pinchas was able to be a good revenger because he was a product of Yosef who was able to koivish his Yetzer. And he never sinned in that kind of sin. And that's the connection to the Yichus of Yosef. That they were revenging against the Midyanim that came out and seduced, and that led to a big Magefa. A lot of Jewish people were killed there in the time of Bilak and Balaam. So you see, Maral took it up, took the issue up. At Mishnah. V'dibru ha'shotrim elam le'mor. Mi'aisha shebona bayis chadash v'lo chanacho yelech v'yashal l'reso. Whoever built a house but didn't have a Chanukas Habayis should go back home. Echad Abone Beis HaTeven It doesn't have to be the house that you dwell in. It could have been a barn where you store straw. Beis HaBakar, where you keep your cattle. Beis HaEtzim, where you store your lumber. Beis HaOitzros, storehouse. Or Echad HaBoinev, Echad HaLokech. Doesn't mean that you built a house. You could have bought a house. Echad HaYorish, you inherited a house. Echad Shenita Lomat, or somebody gifted you a house. They all would have been an exemption for you to go back. Umi Ha'isha Shenoto Kerem V'lo Chilalo. You planted a vineyard and you didn't harvest from it. Echad HaNotea Kerem. Even if you planted 5 different trees that produce different fruit, that's considered enough to go back, but not 4. And echad hanoteya, it's whether you plant, echad hamavrich, whether you graft, echad hamarkiv. Mavrich and arkava is you take a branch and you bring it down into the ground. Arkava is mamish, you cut a branch and you graft. Echad halokeach, you purchase a vineyard, echad hayoresh, you inherited a vineyard, echad shenitan lo mator, given to you as a gift. Umi ha'isha asher eras isha, you gave kiddushin, but you didn't bring her under the chuppah. So echad ha'ma'aretz as a psula, the echad ha'ma'aretz almana. It makes no difference whether the kiddushin you gave was to a psula to an almana. Afilu shomeres yavim. Let's say your brother died and left over a wife, and they didn't have children, and she's a lady in waiting for you to do yibum. That would be reason to be sent home. Afilu shama shemeis achi b'milchama. Even if he had heard that his brother died in the war, choizer u'baloi, he goes home. Kol elu ve'elu shoymin divrei kohen marchei ha'milchama. All of these people that we mentioned that go back, they go along with the army to the border. And then at the border, choizrin limkoima, they go home from there. But they just don't go home. These people who are exempt from the war, misapkin mayim umazu. They have to provide water and food to the army. U misaktin asadrachim. They have to make sure that the roads are clear, that the reserves can be called up. National service, in other words, even if you're not fighting. The following do not have an exemption. Habona Beis Shar. The Beis Shar is like a guardhouse to your house, or an Alexandra patio, or mirpes, a balcony. Hanotea arba ilne Michael, 4 types of trees, or v'chamisha ilne srak, 5 different types of trees, but not fruit producing. Now, a machzres grushaso. You had divorced your wife, and now you want to remarry her. That's not a reason to go back. Or if you've given kiddushin to someone prohibited to you, like almana l'kohen gadol, rusha v'chlutza l'kohen heged, mamzeres u'nesin l'Yisrael, bas Yisrael mamzel nesin. In these cases, lo haya choizer. Rabbi Yehuda Afa boine bayis al machoinoi, lo haya choizer. Let's say you're remodeling a house. It has a foundation, but you're rebuilding it. So that's not an exemption. Rabbi Eliezer Amar Afa boine bein lebeinayim b'sharon lo haya choizer. If they built on the Sharon plain, you know, the plain where Gush Dan, where Tel Aviv is, between Tel Aviv and Ashdod, that's the Sharon plain. So that area was very prone to earthquakes. So if you built a house there, now the people up until now have to go to the calling up place. That means let's say they used to gather in Gilgal. And then from Gilgal, the army would move to the border. So there was a place where they gathered. So all the people we mentioned would have to go to that place. But then they would go to the border and get sent home. The following people don't even have to go to get mustered. Bona bayis v'chanocho. You built your house and you dedicated it, you stay home. Not to kerem v'chilalo. You planted a vineyard and you're busy harvesting it. Hanoses arusaso. You're given shana rishona. So if you married the woman you gave kiddushin to, so it says v'simach es ishto asher lakach. Yikach ish isha chadasha lo yitzei batzava v'lo yavor alav l'chol davar naki yiyeh leveito shana achat v'simach et ishto asher lakach. So it says beferish that he would not go to the war. Or HaKohen says Yivimto. He lived with his Yavama. Shenemar naki yiyeh leveito shana achat. Leveito ze beito. That refers to a house that he built. So in the first year of his house, he could stay home. Yiyeh ze karmo. That's his vineyard. V'simach es ishto zu ishto. Asher lokach lavias yivimto. These people ain't maspikin l'mayim u'mazel. They misak nisadrochim. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to give water or food. They don't have to keep the roads clean. The others had to do that if they didn't go fight in the war.
We see from here that Kohen Gadol is scripted in the army too. You think a Kohen Gadol doesn't have to go in, but we see a Kohen Gadol is also got to go in too, because otherwise they wouldn't have brought up the case of a Kohen Gadol to a Lamana.
Right?
So it has to go. You would think that then he would be exempted, but not.
The Minchas Chareva says, Mikanayu shochichu kiafa kohanim yotzim lemelchama. Shafal bishalo ayu bein nochle haaretz mikol makom nitztavu lishtatef b'melchama. The Birkei Yosef koser shakohanim einan chayav l'lachas melchama ela sheyicholim lasos kain im ritzonim bekach. The Birkei Yosef says it was a reshus, that there wasn't a chiyuv.
So, but they're susceptible. If you go to war, then it's a good chance that they'll be matame. A Kohen Gadol will have to be matame. If he.
So if it's a mechemes mitzvah.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then they got paraduma sprinkled on, and they're not matame anymore.
Okay.
Torah Hebrew Ashoitri. Yachod Dvorim Shalatzman. Are these their own words? No. That refers to the things that the Shotrim added. And up until then, what was supposed to be said was said. And then when it says V'yasva Shotrim, that's what they have to say. So Hamani Mekayim V'dibru Ashotrim, V'divri Meshach L'chama Kos Medaber. They repeat what the Meshach L'chama said. They make sure that everyone hears what the words of the Meshach L'chama were. By the way, it's very interesting. We see that before they went off to war, there was a figure that gave them words. Now, if you read about D-Day, June 6th, 1944, so there was Dwight Eisenhower recorded a message that was broadcast by radio to all the servicemen. It's a famous, Godspeed, and he also addressed them before they went off to battle. And it's interesting. He was also at one of the airfields where they were taking off, where the gliders, where the paratroopers were going to jump into France at night. And he went around and gave chizuk to all the various planes that were taking off that night. So you see such a concept. Now, and maybe they took it from the Torah. Okay, it's a coin medaber v'shoter bashmiya. So the coin would speak, and the shotrim would make sure that everybody heard what he had to say, because they didn't have radio then, so they had to, go out and tell the troops what was going on. Tani chada, coin medaber v'shoter bashmiya. One bride says the coin spoke, and the shoter would pass on the word. Tani the coin medaber v'coin mashmiya. Another bride said a coin passed the word. The Tanidach, a third brisa says shoiter medaber v'shoiter mashmiya. So what's it? On Rabbi Haketz, mivinigash the adibru. So the beginning part, koin medaber v'koin mashmiya. That was all done by the Kohen. Mividibru ad v'yasfu. That's the Kohen starts v'shoiter mashmiya. Miviyasfu, that when they added their words, ve'ela shoiter medaber v'shoiter mashmiya. Then it says mi aish asher bona bayis chodam. Ton rabba. Asher bono, ainli ala asher bono. He has to build it. What lokach? He bought it. The yarash, he inherited it. V'nitin lo b'matana, it was given to him as a gift. Minayin, that he has an exemption. Talmud loymar, mi aish asher bono, mikol makom. Bayis, ainli ala bayis. That's a regular house that you live in. Minayin le'rabos beis ha'tevenu, beis ha'bokor, beis ha'etzrim, beis ha'oitzros. That we said a barn to house straw or cattle, or to lumber or other storehouses, those are fit for exemption. Talmud loymar asher bona. Mikol makom. Yachol shenimar b'afaboyne beishar chsanru mipresses. So maybe if I build a guardhouse, a patio or balcony, that's also an exemption. Talmud loymar bayis. Ma bayis aroy ledira. It has to be a bayis that you can sleep in. Av kol aroy ledira. Rabbi ben Yaakov bayis kemashmo. Has to be for human dwelling. So he would argue and say it's not, it wouldn't be necessarily the other types of houses. Then the Mishnah said, Loi chanach v'loi chanacho, prat legazli. So somebody who stole a house, he's a squatter, so that's not an exemption. Lema, to look, Rabbi Yosef Glili, the Rabbi Yosef Glili, Omar v'rach aleivav. It says, whoever is fearful, zeh misyare me'aveira shebiyad. Well, if he was an avari, like a gazlan, he'd already be going home because of that. He was a gazlan, but he did tshuva and he gave the money back. So we still have to be told that since he stole the house, it's not an exemption. Well, if he gave the money back, he's not a gazlan. He's like a purchaser. Vilahad, let him go back. Kiva to me carb. So since it came into his possession through thievery, it's not an exemption. Umi aisha shenata kera. Pan rabbanah shenata. You planted it. Eli alanata. Lakach yarash v'nitin lo maton minayin. You bought it. You inherited it. You got it as a gift. It's still an exemption from the war. Talmud lomer umi aisha shenata kera. Eli ala kera minayin l'rabos chamisha ilnei Michael. 5 different trees that produce 5 different fruits. Talmud lomer asher nota. It's included. Yachol shenimar ben arbo ilnei Michael. What about 4 trees? Chamisha ilnei Israk, or 5 non-fruit producing trees. Talmud lomer kera. It excludes that. But Yezer ben Yaakov kerem kemashmo. He says already a kerem, only vineyard, nothing else. So he's very Maktiv. V'lo chila, v'lo chila, lo prat l'marvich u'lamarkiv. So here it says if he grafted, then he doesn't go home. The Mishnah said that you do go home. Kan bar kovis iser, kan bar kovis heter. If you do it in a permitted way, you go home. If you do it in a non-permitted way, you don't go home. Hi har kovis heter echidami. What's a permitted way? You have a young tree, that means within the first 3 years when there's still orla, and you grafted it to another young tree. Typically, the boy mishum yalda rishona. Well, it's even the first branch that you grafted has not been mischalel, so it has nothing to do with the grafting. Ela yalda biskena. We're talking about you took a branch that had young fruit on it, you grafted it on an older tree. The din here is, so the young branch becomes part of the older branch. The ein ba din arla. By the way, Zvika and I once wrote an article about testicular transplantation. There was a case of identical twins. One twin was born without testicles. So one brother donated one of his testes and a transplant was done. And a year later, the one who received the testicle had a child. So the question came up, who is the father? Is it the one who, because the DNA, the genetic material is coming from the donor? Or do we say that since it's been grafted into the new donor, it has got his blood supply? So
But you said they're identical twins. Did you say they're identical twins?
Yes.
So how different is the DNA?
They're still not exactly the same. I mean, they're still different individuals.
Uh-huh. Good question.
Yeah, no, no. So we use this Gemara, this grafting business, as a raya that the person who receives the transplant is the father. Because we see, if you say no, then when you graft a branch that has orla fruits, a two-year-old fruit, onto the old tree, you'd still have to give what we say, no, it's mizbatel to the old, and it's potter from orla.
But that creates a problem for all the other cases of infertility.
What do you mean?
Well, let's say you use...
This is a transplant, Kenny. This was like a kidney transplant.
Right, so but you're saying we don't go after the
becomes
DNA. You're saying we don't go after the DNA.
We rarely go with DNA, right?
I think that's a problem modern day, because I think modern day we do go after the DNA. Meaning, let's say you do an ovary transplant because the woman can't have the baby. So you take his sperm and her egg and you put it in a donor. And yet we still say, because of the DNA, it's her baby, even though the woman that had the fetus put into her, the ovum put into her, hatched the baby, so to speak.
No, because by a woman, there are two different aspects to motherhood. There's who contributed the egg, which is the genetic, then who carried the child.
The womb, yeah.
Sometimes three mothers. One person, you got the egg from the mother, and they put it in a surrogate.
Right. So don't we say we go after the DNA after the mother who contributed?
But there are post-game where machmir l'chumra both ways. The mother who gave birth to it is a mother, and the genetic mother is also a mother. So you have to treat both.
So Nebuch and the Chassan, he has two mother-in-laws.
No, meaning like if you strike them, right, there's a din of hakah, you put to death, or you curse them, these din.
Either mother.
L'chumra, they go l'chumra. I'm just saying, this piece that we just learned of Yalda Biskena we used that as a proof. Amr of Yirmiyah. Li'olam Yalda B'Yalda. We're talking about young with young. Ukigon denota lahach kamaisa l'siagu l'koiros. The original grafting was not done for the purposes of fruit. It was done, initially the tree was planted for lumber. Then when you grafted it, it was l'shem perus. It's not. Hanotel l'siagu l'koiros. You planted a tree for it to serve as a border, right? You want a row of trees as a border, but not for fruit. Or you planted the tree for lumber. Potter min orla, there is no din orla. So umayshna yalda biskena the botla. So you said it was botla when you put a young into an old. Umayshna yalda biyalda deloy botla. How come by young and young there's no bitl? Hasam. If you wanted to take your mind off the old tree and just think about the young, so then you would not be chayzer from the battlefield. But when you're planting a tree for lumber and he wants to change it to fruit, that's a reason to come home. Like a case where you didn't plant a fruit tree, the fruit tree grew on its own. I had once these Mexican workers in my backyard, and they must have been eating something. And a lemon tree grew here. I think they were eating something, seeds, and they spit the seeds out, and the tree grew from it. Not like we planted it. That's what it is. It's not. A fruit tree that just grows on its own is chai b'orla. Why didn't you have a simple case rather than this grafting case? Have a vineyard belong to two partners, and one of them grafted from his to his partner. And each one returns to his own planting. This is not a reason for an exemption. You have 5 brothers who are out at war. And one of them dies in the war. All the remaining 5 go home because each one can do yibum for his brother's wife who died. So why wouldn't the partners, both of them, go home? The yibum wife is considered ishto for each one of the brothers, because potentially each one could marry them. But by the vineyard, each one of them is not called his kerem, because the kerem is not miyuchad for any one of them. You grafted a fruit tree with a vegetable. If you did that kind of grafting, because we were looking for a heter graft. So according to Rav Yehuda ben Gamdi, you could go back from the Milchama. But he was machmir that kerem is only a vineyard. Not to in planting, yes, but mavrich umarkiv lo. But not when it comes to grafting. You have a tree or vineyard young, less than a tefach. Chayeves ba'orla kol shnoiseh. It's always chayev in orla. Bishun de mischazi kavashosa. It always looks like 1 year. People are going to think that you're eating orla. V'hanimili shtayim keneged shtayim. V'achas yotzezona. That's when you planted the vineyard 2 and 2, and one of them is in the middle. Avalim kula kerem. But if they're all together, then everyone knows about it. Call it Yislay. they know that this kerem is more than 3 years old, and therefore would not be chayv orla. Yasser Avdimi Amrav Yochanan Mishram Elazar ben Yaakov Meis Toifus Arba Amos L'Kriyat Shema. Within Arba Amos of a corpse, you may not read Kriyat Shema because you're causing pain to the corpse. He cannot participate anymore. Loyeg l'rash cher v'yseyu. Pasuk in Mishlei. Since he can't be Makayim mitzvahs, and this guy's Makayim mitzvah close by, it's like you're making fun. Horgisa, a stepdaughter who grew up, Igdila ben Achim, grows up with brothers that she's really not related to. She's not also to live with them in Adin, so she's not their sister. Asurli nasi la'achim. She's not allowed to get married to one of the brothers. The mischazik hiachsayu. It's like a marasayan. However, v'lohi, the halacha is not like that. Kala islay, people know that she's a stepsister. And you're allowed to marry a stepsister. We're not choishish l'marasayan. That's the Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer. Leket, which is when the farmer collects the grain and whatever drops from his hand is leket. Shikha, whatever he forgets. Peah, the corners of the field. All of these things go to the aniyim. She'asan begorim. But you gathered it up and you piled it up. Hopeful of meiser. You still have to be mafresh meiser from it. Normally, you don't take meiser from things that you give to aniyim. But people, it's like marisayin. People think they're his fruit that he's piling up. And Amr Ula Lo Amaron, this halacha wasn't said, Ela B'Sadeh. In his Aval Be'ir Kala Islay Lemilsa. In the city, everybody knows that what he's bringing is this is for aniyim, this is for him, and then you wouldn't have to be mafresh meister from what he separated for the aniyim. Amr Yitzchak Rav Yochanan ben Yaakov. Yalda b'chusa mitefa. A vine that's less than a tefa chai, ain't a mekadesh as a zroim. If you planted wheat to make klaya kerem, it's not called a kerem yet because they're too small. Hanamili shtaim keneged shtaim b'achas yotze zon. Avakula kerem magish. But if it's planted like a regular kerem, not 2 and 2 and 1 in the middle, then even if it's less than a tefach, if you plant wheat, it already becomes usher keklaya kerem. Okay.
I know a case where there was stepbrother married a stepsister. How did it happen? They got married, and then later on, their parents got married together. So they got married b'kosher, and then later on, their father and mother of the bride and the groom got married themselves. But the children got married first. But when there were two kids.
But Elazar, a stepsister can marry one of the brothers. We just said you have a family. There's 4 brothers. Then his wife dies. He marries a new woman, and she comes in with a daughter. She's a stepdaughter to him and stepsister to the brothers. The stepsister is allowed to marry the brothers. There's no Mara sign. Oh, they live together. People will think a brother's marrying a sister.
Right.
The din is a brother can marry a stepsister.
Yeah. Only when they were raised together. That's when the question is.
But even when they're raised together, the halacha is they can marry each other. We're not choices from our sign.
Yeah.
Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer says it clearly.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting when you have 5 brothers that are exempt because are they all zikuk to the woman?
Yes. There's zika to all of them until one of them either does klitzer or one of them
not
doesn't.
necessarily the first one, because the first one.
No, there's a kadima, there's a bechor, there's a kadima, but the zika between all of them, right? The zika's there. We want the oldest to do the yibum, but then once he does that, then the zika to the others go away.
Now going back to the Kohen Gadol, when you say that a Kohen Gadol's got, that's probably just like you say, mechamis mitzvah, v'cheres rishus, maybe not, because it says kadoshim tiyu. Maybe he wouldn't be allowed to go into mechamis rishus, right? A Kohen Gadol.
Because you have to avoid becoming tummy.
So that only
Because
applies because of a mechamas mitzvah that applies.
Yeah, but
Quit the
Bismillah,
Hanishan.
all the milchamas are milchemes mitzvah. When the Arabs are attacked, all of these are considered. When it's life and death, it's milchemes mitzvah.
Estoy tan mareada hoy.
What was that?
Spanish.
Spanish.
Sure.
Okay, so tomorrow is Sorbam Rabban, and we continue Natilas Yadayim, and then we'll do
At
the
8,
daf at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
and the surah at 8:10.
Sorba at 8:10.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a little
Shkoyach.
hard. I don't get home from shul till about